If the economy is supposed to make us wealthier, why does every solution to the issues we see always boil down to printing more money, taking on more debt, or raising another ceiling that was supposed to be unbreakable? Maybe the economy doesn't just have Ponzi like behavior, maybe the economy depends on this Ponzi esque system. And if that sounds extreme, stick around. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how the US economy stays alive and why it can't stop expanding without collapsing in on itself. Hi, I'm Raj. Let's start simple. A classic Ponzi scheme pays old investors with money from new ones. No real profits, just constant inflow. The moment new money stops entering, the whole thing unravels. History is littered with examples of this. The story that these schemes got their name from starts in the 1900s with Charles Ponzi, an Italian immigrant who came to America and found an opportunity. Charles got to America by a boat, which back then would have taken at least a week to cross the ocean, and the worst part, no Wi Fi. After seeing the same blue ocean, hearing the same waves bump against the ship, and adjusting to the sea salty air, he, like most people, got bored. Rumor has it, he lost most of the money he came with on that boat gambling. He steps off Port Boston and makes his way in the New World working wherever he can, just to live. One day he noticed he could buy vouchers that could be traded for stamps in different countries for a profit. Remember, this is old school. We're talking paper mail stamps. If you're old enough, you probably know exactly what the rounded edges still feel like and the stick of the back of them on your fingers. So the idea was these coupons could be bought in one country and sent internationally with a letter or whatever you're mailing, so the recipient could trade the coupon for a stamp in their country to be used to send a reply back to you. It was an arbitrage opportunity. Buy vouchers in countries with weak currency. Trade them for stamps in a country with a strong currency, then sell the stamps. The problem was these vouchers cost money. So Ponzi got others to invest, offer them a return for their risk, and use their money to buy the vouchers, trade for stamps, sell the stamps, and he would take a cut as a middleman. This is risky, but is a valid business model as long as the margins are there. Word got out that Ponzi had an opportunity that pays high returns, and eventually he figured out that it was easier to just pay old investors with new investors' money instead of actually buying the vouchers, then buying the stamps, then selling the stamps. Why do extra work when the money was rolling in, and why risk it gambling away bored on a ship for a week? Ponzi became a victim of his own success. People naturally got curious about the massive and extremely fast rise of his operation. After a little digging, it came out that what he claimed he was doing with the vouchers and stamps was mathematically impossible, and the whole thing collapsed. People lost money, Ponzi went to jail, and eventually faded into history. Now take that idea and apply it to a modern economy. The government spends more than it earns. To cover the gap it borrows, that debt gets rolled over, refinanced, and expanded year after year, and the payment of old promises are funded by new money. Does that sound weird? Especially after the Charles Ponzi story? In my opinion, yes. The payouts are social programs, interest payments, and basically whatever else the government pays for that it can't afford from taxpayer dollars. Instead of investors, the new participants are existing taxpayers, foreign bond buyers, and future generations. Fun fact, money is made up. We need it to transact value day to day, so it has a function, but it can just be created by a central authority as long as we all agree that what it creates has value. So it's all the government's money anyway. We're just holding on to it for a little while. Here's the real engine behind it all: debt. Every year, the US spends more than it takes in through taxes. The difference, the deficit, is covered by issuing treasury bonds. Investors, banks, and other countries buy those bonds because they trust the US government will always pay them back. But where does that repayment money come from? New debt. It's like refinancing your credit card bill, using another credit card, and calling it growth. I have seen zero people in real life use this successfully as a financial strategy, by the way. And because the Federal Reserve can create money out of thin air to buy that debt, the cycle feeds itself. More debt, more dollars, more spending, each layer built on the last. But here's the twist: this system actually works as long as everyone keeps believing it will. What really holds this together isn't gold or oil or even the US military, it's confidence. The US dollar is the world's reserve currency. That means global trade, commodities, and debt are priced in dollars. As long as people believe the dollar will hold value, they'll keep using it. confidence creates demand. Demand creates value. That's why the US can run massive deficits that would destroy smaller economies. The world needs dollars to function, but confidence is fragile. What happens if the world starts to lose faith in the dollar? We'll get to that. Think of every federal promise, Social Security, Medicare, defense spending, as long-term liabilities. They have to be paid even if revenue doesn't match. So how do we fund them? Through the next generation's taxes, new debt, inflation, which silently shifts purchasing power from savers to the government. In a sense, each new generation is the new investor, keeping the system running. Their labor, taxes, and spending sustain obligations made decades earlier. It's not a conspiracy, it's literally just the math. In the next few years, interest payments on U.S. debt are projected to exceed defense spending. That means we'll soon pay more to service debt than to protect the country. And once interest compounds faster than economic growth, the trap tightens. You can't grow your way out of it. You can only borrow faster. GDP, our favorite economic scoreboard, measures output, but it doesn't separate productive growth from debt-driven growth. If I borrow $10 trillion to build things, GDP jumps. But if those projects don't produce long-term value, we just inflated numbers. We didn't actually do anything. That's the magic. We're told the economy is growing, but much of that growth is financed by borrowing from the future. It's like using a home equity loan to throw a party and calling it an investment. So the system demands endless expansion. If GDP flatlines, confidence drops, markets panic, and policymakers step in to stimulate again. The pendulum just swings between stimulus and slowdown. If all this sounds unsustainable, that's because it is, but only in theory. In practice, the system has survived this long because it's kind of too big to fail. Every major institution, governments, banks, corporations, operate within this same framework. The global economy is denominated in dollars, US treasuries are treated as risk-free, and investors keep buying because what's the alternative? Everyone is in the same game, and no one wants to be the first to stop playing. We all have the same incentive. We all need the system to keep going because we all lose if it stops. It's like musical chairs where the chairs are made of debt and the music doesn't end. But we know this is fragile and we see cracks forming. How does this crumble? Well, history gives us clues. Rome debased its currency until faith collapsed. The Weimar Republic printed to survive until it didn't. In 1971, the US cut the gold link because there wasn't enough gold to cover all the dollars already created. Today, the same pressure is building, only now it's global. Rising debt payments, slowing productivity, and competition from digital currencies in other nations are testing the system's limits. Every Ponzi-like structure ends the same way. When participants stop believing, the payouts can't continue. Confidence cracks first, and everything else follows. So what does this mean for you and me? It means understanding that the economy's health depends on perpetual growth, not necessarily on value creation. It means diversifying outside pure cash and long-term debt. And it means being aware that when the system adjusts, and it will, wealth will transfer from the unprepared to the informed. But more importantly, it means asking, if the foundation of modern finance requires infinite expansion, what happens in a world with finite resources and patience? That's where we go next. Because if the US economy truly functions like a Ponzi system, then the next logical question is, what happens when the inflows slow down? How does the government respond? Do they inflate the debt away, raise taxes, restructure, or build an entirely new system? In the next video, we're going to explore exactly that, how the US could reset its financial system, what that might look like for everyday people, and who stands to gain when the rules change. I'll see you over there.